Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV, coming to you from Globe, Arizona. I know, where the heck is that? I live here and I don't even know. Actually, we're about 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains. And our guest today, I'm so excited to have Gavin Harrison on for the first time since our first interview almost 8 years ago, coming to us from London. Gavin, welcome, and thanks again for taking time to join us.
Pleasure, Dan.
So it's been almost 8 years since the January Winter NAMM show of 2013. What have you been up to since then? Start from the beginning. No, no, actually, you've done a lot, and where I'd like to start with this, if it's okay, is I'm fascinated with what the whole King Crimson thing has turned into. And folks, tell us where you're watching from, and if you have questions, I'll be looking over here at the show, take questions. But you know, it's one thing for you and Pat to join together, and now there's three of you. I'd love to know, A, what takeaways do you have for drummers and percussionists for playing with other drummers and percussionists, and also in particular the process within King Crimson of how that works. Does Robert Fripp write every note for you guys to play? Does he give you a lot of added latitude to work off each other? What's the process been like?
Yeah, I mean, this particular version of the band started in 2013. Robert called me and he said, I'm thinking of putting the band back together, but with three drummers. What do you think? I said, well, who are the other two drummers? He said, well, I'm not going to tell you to start with, but I just want to see if you are interested, and what would you do with two other drummers? You know, I hadn't spoken to Robert at that point in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite a surprise phone call. And he said, eventually he told me, okay, the other two drummers are Pat Mastalotto and Bill Riflin. I didn't know Bill Riflin at the time. And he said, I want you to arrange the drum arrangements for the songs. Don't bother with trying to play anything, you know, from the original records. I want you to reinvent rock drumming and just see what you can do with three drummers. So
wow.
So there was a year between that phone call and the band getting together. There was a year. So about 5 months later, I had Pat Mastalotto and Bill Riflin actually come here in this studio, and I set up three kits. I had tried recording myself 3 times to see if parts could play. None of us were interested in playing the same thing on top of each other.
Right, good.
That seemed pretty point. That is a sound that's been done before, but you know, you're just going to basically have 3 bass drums flamming and 3 snare drums flamming.
Right.
And you know, that's a sound in itself, but it wasn't a sound that interested myself or Pat or Bill.
You were looking for more of an orchestrated type of arrangement, right?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is, you know, when I record myself 3 times, it sounds a certain way. When I get 2 other drummers to play, you know, 2 of the parts, it doesn't sound anything really like how I played it, because I've got a way of playing and I've got a certain sound.
Right.
Pat's got his own sound and his own way of playing, and so did Bill. So I quickly realized that writing super intricate parts for 3 drummers that I could play doesn't necessarily mean that they could play it. And so the first week was pretty tough. We recorded ourselves and we tried to see what kind of things worked, what kind of things didn't work, and to take advantage of 3 drummers, to think of it as one drummer with 6 arms and 6 legs. And all the different sounds that were available across the 3 drum sets.
Yeah.
You know, Pat's got a completely different sound to me, and Bill had a very jazzy sound. So, you know, Bill just played sort of traditional 1 rack tom and 1 floor tom. So me writing drum parts across 5 tom-toms, you know, well, that's not going to work because neither Pat nor Bill had that sort of drum set. So it was a lot of learning in the beginning and a lot of rehearsals and a lot of listening and considering. You know, you can come up with a part that 3 drummers play, but is it any good? Does it work for the song?
Right.
You know, and Robert had asked me to write some drum feature pieces. So I wrote, I think, yeah, the first year I wrote one piece that we played, and that took a lot of rehearsing and a lot of adjusting. No, I mean, not only do they play differently, but we've all kind of got a slightly different sense of time. You know, a natural sense of time of where you kind of place the beat and how your bass drum and snare drum and hi-hat or ride cymbal kind of fit. It's a very organic thing. You know, you could have 3 drummers play exactly the same part and it doesn't feel the same, not because of a tempo issue, but because of an issue of how you line up your internal parts, how your hi-hat, snare drum, and bass drum line up, but then how you line up to an external reference like a click, whether you play ahead, whether you play behind, whether you play in the middle, or bits of all of that. So that was a learning experience as well. So yeah, it was fascinating, and it was very much a work in progress to start with. And the first year, I think we did 4-week tour of the States, and you know, there was lots of recordings of that, board recordings, and so we refined it. Every year there would be a new set of songs to learn, some new arrangements I'd have to make, and I'd try and write some new drum pieces, and we would sort of battle through them. So it's been a slow evolution. Unfortunately, Bill left us at the beginning of this year. He passed away, I think, in late January.
Right.
But he's been ill. He had been ill for the last 3 or 4 years. So Jeremy Stacey came in 2016, 2017. And of course, to take over from Bill Riflin, he needed to play keyboards as well. So I had to find a drummer who could play keyboards, because you know, it's not all 3 of us playing all the same time. Right. There's plenty of times where I don't play anything. I just sit there for 5 minutes, as you would if you were playing, you know, bassoon in an orchestra. You don't just play the whole time.
Right.
It's a sort of rock and roll orchestra. There's lots of times where people in the band play nothing, and that's fine. That's a good part.
Yeah, that's
just
very interesting. Yeah, and what was the attitude like? Was everyone equally enthused, or was there a lot of F this flying around the room, and it was all trying to be worked out in the beginning, or what was that like?
No. We were all very positive. We all knew what we wanted the outcome to be. It wasn't any sort of competition, or you know, there wasn't a competitive vibe. Like, oh, I want to play that. I want to play a better fill than you. There wasn't any of that going on.
Right.
So it was just purely about trying to find the best way to use 3 drummers in these songs without necessarily trying to replicate what one drummer had played many, many years before.
Yeah, that makes sense. And were there any songs in particular that, as you went through the catalog to sort of, like you said, when Robert said reinvent, were there any that you were really excited about sinking your teeth into and saying, oh, let me see what I could do with Indiscipline or whatever? Were there some favorites that you really were eager to dig into with this process?
Actually, Discipline was a very interesting song because it's got a multi-layers of polyrhythms, and although on the record it's just Bill Bruford, I found a way to kind of creatively use 3 drummers where, I mean, it's kind of, the song Discipline has got a dual layer. Robert's playing in 5/8. So I designed a rhythm that Pat could play in 5 that kind of stayed with Robert. And then the bass and the drums play in 17/8. but only kind of, you'd play something like eight and a half times, but it's not a half time. It's like 7/8 through your 9th time comes the next section.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are playing in 17 have to always reference the person playing in 5 to know when the next section comes. Otherwise, you're going to arrive in the next section in the middle of a 17.
Right.
So that requires you to sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper and actually figure this out.
Yeah.
How many of these do we need to do? And how far into that final 17 do we go before we go into the next section, which is a change of rhythm? Mm-hmm. So I would sit and figure all those things out, write them out. And in fact, we went to at the start of one of the tours when we played Discipline. We were in Austin. We were rehearsing in Austin, Texas, and we hadn't had time for the drummers to get together. So me and Jeremy, we got up really early and we went to Pat Mastelotto's house, and we spent half a day just trying to play these things. Because at the start of every tour, we normally go into a rehearsal room, just the drummers. And I've got some backing tracks on my laptop that we can play to, but you can't really rehearse the drummers while the whole band's sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We need to arrive at the rehearsals as the 3 drummers, as one percussion unit, which is already kind of polished. It's hard enough trying to play that with the band, but if the 3 of us are not together, then it's chaos. And Discipline was a very, very hard song to play.
Could imagine. Wow. And I bet performing this stuff must have been challenging but fun at the same time for all the same reasons.
Yeah. I mean, the first night or the first time you play one of the really hard songs, your heart rate's gone up and you need to really concentrate.
Yeah.
Someone else in the band could play something that you weren't expecting, and that could throw you. And when you're in the middle of a 17/8 against 5/8 illusion, you don't want to get thrown because someone's played something unexpected.
Right.
So massive amount of concentration. Some nights you sit there gritting your teeth and thinking, no, I'm just going to keep going. Oh, we're okay,
Right.
It'd be very, very easy to lose the plot and get lost in the middle of a King Crimson show.
Yeah, this is why drinking heavily before a show comes in handy, right?
I mean, it's one of the reasons why we ask the audience not to film us. It puts a lot of pressure on the performers. I mean, apart from the idea that it's kind of disrespectful to the people around you. You're holding up your iPad and the guy behind you can't see it. Or you see people just sitting there like this. It's like, look, there's King Crimson here.
They're right there.
You're just staring at this stupid little screen, man. You've lost the plot. But there's something else which I don't think anyone's ever talked about. And the reason I don't like being filmed is that it's a different feeling being filmed. Like when I was a kid, I used to go to the BBC studios with my dad. My dad was a trumpet player. Mm-hmm. And there was a sort of phenomenon called red light fever. Now, the orchestra would be in the BBC studio and they would rehearse, and then the conductor would say, okay, we're going to go for one. And then this massive red light would come on and everyone's sphincter in the band would tighten up. And everyone would have this sort of anxiety about, oh, God, the red light's on. I'm under pressure now. I can't mess this up. Right. Because, this wasn't the days of Pro Tools. Yeah. This wasn't the days of let's just drop in. You can't just drop in a whole orchestra in the third bar. You basically got to play it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So there was this kind of red light fever anxiety. Now, the opposite side of that was going to play live, where there was no recording. You could have fun, you could relax, you could shoot the shit, and whatever you played was gone forever, and you could take chances, you could experiment, and all that was great. But now every night is red light fever.
Thousands of them a night.
Thousands of people, and it's a very weird feeling to know that you're being recorded. Of course, I've done concerts that I've paid for the cameramen to film me.
Yeah.
But I'm mentally prepared that night.
Yeah.
Okay, we're shooting our DVD. Okay, it's not a comfortable feeling.
But your mindset is there.
Yeah, okay, we're paying 100,000 euros for this TV crew to film us for this DVD. And whenever we did it in Porcupine Tree, we used to film 2 nights, because the first night we all got really anxious and made mistakes, and things happen when you're being recorded on live in a live situation that have never happened before. You drop a stick that you've never done before.
Yeah.
You forget things happen under pressure that never happened. Anyway, so Porcupine Tree, we always filmed 2 nights, and we pretty much always used the second night because of the anxiety of the first night. But now, the reason I don't like being filmed is that it just doesn't make me feel comfortable. I was hoping to have a fun night that I enjoyed and that I could relax and play and enjoy it and fun. But no, it's not fun anymore, because someone's filming me, and this is going to be on YouTube before, it's probably already on Facebook as we're talking.
Yeah.
They're streaming live, and that's not a comfortable thing that I personally like. That's not a pressure I really want to be under. Every single time I play in public, someone's filming me, and it does make me uncomfortable. You can't control people. You can try. Even in the most compliant of places like Japan, there'll still be the odd person. Will still get their camera out or their phone.
And it's probably an American in the audience.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's some countries are more compliant than others, but
yeah.
King Crimson make a really, really, really big effort to ask the audience. There's announcements, there's signs, there's posters, there's different language, local language announcements, and people still film it. So it's kind of frustrating if it lets you, if you're bothered by it. And normally it doesn't bother me, but as soon as I look up and I see a guy filming me, a sort of paranoia, anxiety comes over me over everything I play. Oh my God, is this going to be analyzed on YouTube and all these people criticizing what I've done? It's just kind of not fun. I'm sure people in the audience, the people in the audience do not even consider that.
Right, and it's all in good intentions, but people ought to be more respectful of that, absolutely. I remember, because we're the same age, I remember going to concerts long before these portable phone devices, long before that, and it was indeed a different experience to perform back then and to attend a concert. It was a completely different experience on both ends. It's quite interesting when you really think about it. For those of you that are old enough to know that. You mentioned, I want to kind of switch to gear for a moment, and then we'll talk more about your beginnings in drumming. You mentioned dropping a stick, and I too rarely drop a stick, and when I do, there's this weird thing that happens with me where I instinctively, instead of just letting it go and reaching for another stick in my stick bag, which I keep in a handy place, of course, I instead automatically chase after that stick. Sometimes I can get it, sometimes it falls down in the Bermuda Triangle, never to be seen again. And and what happens, and I'm curious on your perspective, do you try to catch that lost stick, or do you grab for a new one? And when I grab for a new one, it's cold, and the other one is warm because I've been playing with it for 20 minutes, and even though they're the same stick, they feel unbalanced. And to me, I'm like consciously thinking about that for more than a moment. Do you experience this?
I almost never drop sticks. It very, very, very rarely. Of course, when I did the Dave Letterman show performance, right in the middle of it, I dropped a stick.
Yeah.
And the irony of it did hit me because it all went in slow motion. The stick, I'm playing away, the stick went out of my hand. And as it was spinning away in slow motion, I thought, that's so typical that it would happen on the live TV show,
Right.
rather than every time I've rehearsed it, I've
Yeah.
never dropped a stick,
Right there
right?
behind you.
Yeah, I've got to say though, in the last couple of years, I've been using that ZOG'S Sex Wax.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it. I don't like playing without it. It gives me such a feeling of security. I mean, I'm at it all night. I'm polishing. I'm rubbing this wax onto the stick.
I was going to say, you do mean the drumstick, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I've got in my bag. I'll wax a few of those as well in case I've got to pick one up.
Wow, I got to try that. That's awesome.
I absolutely don't want to play without it. It just takes all the anxiety out of, the stick slipping away.
Yeah.
I've been on stage sometimes thinking, oh, the stick's going out of my hand, it's going.
Yeah.
And I can feel it go, my fingers over gripping, I can feel it moving. And since I started with that wax, I've never had that feeling. I mean, sticks break more, much more than me dropping them.
Yeah.
Is I think, oh my God, it's gonna. You can feel it. Oh, it's got a split in it.
Yeah.
Can I make it to the end of this fill? Then I can throw it and pick up another one.
Right.
And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. But you can feel it as soon as the stick's got a split in it.
Yeah.
Oh no, Sometimes you can get away with it for a few bars until you think of a moment where you could.
It makes sense. Yeah. And when you grab another one, does it feel weird to you because of the difference in temperature between the two hands, like it does for me?
No.
I don't know why that's a weird thing for me, but it is. It's strange. Weird. Does your camera happen to go all the way back to where your kit is? Are you able to give us a tour of your gear?
I can't because this is fixed.
Okay.
I'm looking at an iMac, which
No
is
worries.
on a stand, so I can't pick the iMac up.
No worries. Give us a quick rundown of your kit. You have a wonderful setup, and it's been quite the same for a long time. Is that right?
The layout of my kit has been pretty much the same since about 1985.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really, really liked the 8, 10, 12 across the front and 2 floor toms.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were times where I thought, man, I wish I hadn't got such a big kit. But I like to play the toms in a very melodic kind of way. Sometimes the toms are part of my groove.
Right.
And if I've just got a 13 and a 16, I can't do those things. I can't play melodically. I think of the toms as like a marimba or something.
Yeah.
I play little melodies on them. So I always use 8, 10, 12. At the moment, I'm using 15 and 18 as floor toms.
Oh, interesting.
I used to play 14 and 16, but I always had a problem tuning a 14-inch floor tom. It always seemed, I guess because of the tuning range I wanted the pitch of that 14 to be, it always sustained forever.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Whatever I did to it, and I don't put any damping on my toms.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to have a 14 that was covered in tape and tissue and things like that.
Yeah.
And I've always used a 22-inch bass drum, and usually a 14 or a 12-inch snare, and they're both about 5 inches. I don't really play deep snares. I don't get on with 6.5, 7.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've had some, and I just couldn't be me on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that it's not always only the sound, but drums feel different depending on how they're made and the sizes. And that feel, I think the better it feels, the better we play. And the more fun it is too, of course.
Yeah, and I don't do a sort of chameleon thing where, I go to a session with 50 snare drums and give them what they want.
Right.
I just go with my sound.
Yeah.
And hopefully you've booked me because you want my sound.
Right.
If you don't like my sound, then we're wasting time.
Yeah.
I've got a sound that I've sort of consciously or subconsciously developed over the last 25 years. That's my sound, and I think it's a musical sound that will fit almost anything, and I always use that sound. I mean, I'll tune the snare up or I'll tune the snare down, but I'm not the sort of session guy who would say, oh yeah, concert toms, here they are.
Right.
You want an 18-inch bass drum? Yeah, here it is. You want a 26-inch bass drum? Yeah, here it is. You want 8-inch snare? Yeah, I've got all that.
Go out to the truck.
I don't do that, yeah.
Yeah. What was it and when was it that sparked your interest in wanting to play drums?
Oh, that was because the trumpet was too hard.
And as you mentioned, your father was a trumpet player.
Yeah, and me and my brothers, we all tried to play the trumpet when we were very small. In fact, that, I don't know if you can see, they've got a trumpet hanging on the wall of it. That was the trumpet that we all tried to play when we were 7 years old.
Wow.
And I was terrible at it. I loved music and I liked dancing. I was in dance school when I was 6.
Oh, wow.
I liked dance and I liked music, and the rhythmic part of it just kind of made sense that I was a drummer. I wish I could play the trumpet now, but I just didn't have an aptitude for it.
And how old were you when you started playing?
6.
6. Oh, so you were 6 when you started drums as well.
Yeah.
Cool. And who were some of the influences you gravitated to? Were they in jazz, big band?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was a big influence. He could play drums. And back in those days, you know, my dad would take me to sessions and I would sit next to the drummer. And it was fantastic. Sometimes I'm sitting in the middle of the big band at the BBC, 8 years old, sitting next to a drummer called Paul Brodie. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. My dad also worked at a nightclub in London called the Talk of the Town, which was set up as a sort of Vegas-style cabaret club. It was set up in the 60s. And my dad worked there from mid-60s until it closed in 1982. But when I was at school, he'd say, oh, we got a great drummer on. They'd have a visiting artist who would do a month. Like Julie Garland would come and do a month cabaret.
Oh, wow.
Stevie Wonder came. Diana Ross came. You know, Mel Torme.
Who was a great drummer, by the way, too.
Yes, and he would do a duet with his drummer in a very Buddy Rich style. And so whenever there was Pearl Bailey came with Louis Bellson.
Oh, wow.
So I'm about 12 years old, and my dad said, right, I'm taking you off school on Monday because I'm taking you to the rehearsal, the Pearl Bailey rehearsal. Louis Bellson's the drummer. And he was super nice guy. And I sat next to him all the way through the rehearsal. And then I got on his drums and we had some pictures taken. He was so nice.
Amazing.
And I got to sit next to and watch, you know, some incredible drummers, inches away. So it was very exciting. It was a great education for me to really see people at work reading, and I'd sit there and try and read the chart that they were reading, and then I'd see how they played and see the whole band, and it was just idyllic, really.
That's really a sweet story. That's really neat. As you got older, like into your teens and early 20s and started playing professionally, who did you gravitate towards as your drum heroes or inspiration in those days, moving, not that you left the others behind, but who else were you magnetic to?
Yeah, I guess when I was about 14, 15, I heard, I had a record with an American drummer called Steve Schaefer. And that I was fascinated by Steve Schaefer. And then I heard Steve Gadd, and then I heard Jeff Porcaro. And, you know, American records were not easy to come by in those days. And there was a shop a couple of miles from where we lived. Actually, the guy who ran the shop was a drummer. And I'd get on my bicycle, go down to this shop, and he would just play me things. You know, play me like Chick Corea, Mad Hatter, and you know. And then when I could afford it, I'd buy the vinyl album and ride home and listened to it for forever, you know. And he was, you know, very, he loved Steve Gadd. So I heard a lot of Steve Gadd stuff, and I was buying records with Jeff Porcaro on. And that kind of went through my late teens. There was a drummer who influenced me a lot called Steve Jansen. He was the drummer in a band called Japan.
Yes.
And he just played so differently from anyone else I'd ever heard. It just kind of blew my mind. You know, I was a big fan of Simon Phillips, and I knew Simon Phillips. He was a neighbor almost, and I loved Simon. And you know, and Billy Cobham and Stuart Copeland. When I heard Steve Jansen, it was like, wow, where did you come from? I couldn't hear any influence.
Oh, interesting. It was so different.
So he was a big influence on me. And, you know, then later on, by mid-'80s, you know, Manu Katché and, you know, Rick Marotta, Jerry Marotta.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many drummers that I was kind of influenced by. I liked drummers who had a really nice feel, that they gave the music a certain kind of feel, which, you know, Jeff Porcaro and Steve Gadd had kind of installed in me, this kind of laid-back time thing, which I didn't hear the local British drummers doing. It was a sort of American thing. They could play laid back.
Yeah.
You know,
Rick Marotta was that music, really, Gavin? I'm sorry, was the music that you listened to a lot back then by Jeff and Steve, was that a lot of Steely Dan and things around that era?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, mixed in with all that, I was listening to swing stuff, you know, Tony Williams kind of era. You know, I was still very interested in swing. I think that was probably the first thing I ever started playing was, you know, swing on a ride cymbal.
Mm-hmm.
Before I even had a drum kit, I think I had a ride cymbal on a homemade cymbal stand, and I'd just sort of play along to records and see if I could stay in time with the records.
Right. That's awesome. And was it the combination of starting with swing and big band and then being turned on to music like Chick Corea that kind of shaped your sensibilities for progressive music?
I don't know. I didn't listen to progressive music. I knew who the bands were, but I didn't grow up listening to Yes and Genesis and Pink Floyd, King Crimson, Rush. It sort of didn't interest me.
Interesting.
When in 1983, I auditioned for a band called Renaissance.
Ah, yes.
Or Renaissance, as we call them over here.
Yeah.
And I got the audition. I mean, I got the gig because I could read and I could understand odd time signatures. So I could navigate long charts, long songs without getting lost, without going wrong, with lots of odd time signatures. And so they were kind of impressed with me that I could get through complicated structures.
Yeah.
I wasn't, you know, obviously I'd never heard of Renaissance when I was a kid. I just didn't have any exposure really to that traditional progressive music at the time.
Yeah, I do remember them. I lived in a band house for a while in the early 80s when I was in a progressive rock band, and the bass player had this enormous collection of nothing but imports. He didn't buy anything that was sold in America at a record store. I was doing the opposite. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there were those bands like Renaissance. I remember he had Marillion before Marillion broke in the U.S. We were listening to that, and you know, I remember him breaking that out and saying, "Listen, this guy sounds just like Peter Gabriel," and all that stuff. It was fun being exposed to things that sometimes, in a rare case, made its way to the U.S. You know, in mainstream. So that was fun. I want to look at comments real quick and questions from the audience. If you have a question for Gavin, let me know, and I'll read that off. And again, let us know, as always, where you're watching from. It's just refreshing coming to life here. And then we'll talk more drumming and more music with Gavin Harrison here on Drum Talk TV. Oh, this is an interesting question. Anthony Casina, thank you for joining us. Anthony asks, How does the wax sound on a cross stick? Does it change the sound at all, like a cross stick on the rim? Or do you not have it down, up that far?
I always play the cross stick this way round.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't actually play some people like to play the cross stick with the butt end side. I actually prefer the sound of it this way round. So
yeah, me too, yeah.
So actually the wax doesn't really hit the rim.
Doesn't get up there? That's an interesting question. Let's see. Here's a question or comment rather, from Chris DiCiara. Says, hi Gavin, got all your books and DVDs and need to revisit them as soon as possible. Oh, a question. Any plans on another book and or DVD? Thanks for hanging after the State Theater Porcupine Tree show years ago.
Wow. I have been considering the idea of another book, but it would be a transcription book.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty lazy. You know, making a DVD is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I'm not a drum teacher. I don't have any students. I don't do any teaching whatsoever. Lots of people ask me if they could study with me, and I'm just not a drum teacher. I don't think it's something I'm good at. I don't think it's something that would be worthwhile for the student. You know, the books that I wrote in the 90s, the rhythmic illusion books, were I wrote the book for me as a way of recording and organizing all the thoughts I'd had about displacement and modulation and creating a rhythmic illusion.
Oh, wow.
So rather selfishly, I didn't kind of put it out there for the people. I put it out there for me so I could stop having to sort of think about it, wipe the hard drive clean.
Yeah, that brain dump.
It was like a sort of milestone. I needed to say, right, this is all the ideas I've collected so far on this topic.
Make room for new.
This is the way I've organized it into different chapters, because this kind of illusion works in that way, and this is a different sort of illusion. And I wrote 2 books based on those ideas, which I've used a lot actually over the last, especially in being in progressive rock bands. So I didn't do a sort of education thing for a very long time.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. Brian Kuderbach has a question. He says, we all hear a lot of outstandingly technical drummers. How did you learn to play so musically? You play what absolutely seems appropriate.
Oh, thanks. I don't really divorce one from the other. I think when people talk about technical drummers, they quite often mean drummers who play very fast. And so, you know, I'm someone, I think you should hide your technique. I think the thing that you should put across is your idea, your musical idea should come across. Now, if it takes an extraordinary amount of technique in the background to pull it off, that's the technique you need to, you know, portray that idea. But technique is something I don't really want to see. It's the engine, it's the inner works, it's your underwear. I don't want to see your underwear.
You want to see, you're more interested in the end result, right?
I'm only interested in the end result.
Yeah.
You know, I'm interested in the art. I'm interested in the finished sculpture and what it means to the person who's looking at it. I'm not interested in the chisels and the hammers that made it, right? I know there's an endless fascination, especially amongst some males, about the tools and the engine, and the kind of guys who go to look inside a car engine and look at all these bits, and you know, fascinated with the mechanics. I'm actually not interested in the mechanics, but I do need enough technique to express my ideas. So if I have an idea that I can't play, then I'm going to have to practice that idea and possibly work on my technique to be able to do it. I don't have many musical ideas that I can't play, or I don't have ideas that include crazy amounts of notes. You know, when I listen to a piece that I'm going to play on, I just think, what would I really love to hear the drums do on this song? And it's never 64th notes on a go-go bells. So I don't ever have to worry about practicing 64th notes on a go-go bells. I kind of practice the things that help me get my ideas onto the record, and hopefully the person who's listening to it is having an emotional reaction to what I've played, not, God, this drummer's got a great technique. You know, if you go to see if people are coming to see me because they think I've got a great technique, then it's all been a waste of time. You know, I don't think of myself as a technical drummer, and I certainly don't want people to think, oh my God, his technique's fantastic. Because if you're concentrating on my technique, then I haven't hidden it well enough, and it's like I've failed. If what you hear from me is, oh God, this guy's got a great technique, because that it's only there to articulate the ideas, the musical ideas.
Right. Those are wonderful perspectives. Thanks for sharing that, and thank you for the question. I'm going to look at a few more, but what winds me up is when drummers or fans or other musicians see a video or a performance of a drummer, and they say, oh, he's not holding the stick right, or look at her posture, or what's with that setup. And my question to that is always, would a blind person care? Or if you were only listening to the recording, would any of that matter? And the answer is, of course not. It's always got to be about the music, and let it just stop there. You know, like you're saying, who cares how they got there, unless there's something to learn from that to put in their toolbox to help them further their skills and everything. But other than that, I don't think anything like that should ever be criticized. And then I know drummers that don't have legs or might be missing a hand, and they have a way to play. How do you criticize that? You know, so I think all that's in the same box, really, if you will.
Yeah, I don't care how people hold the sticks. It might not. I don't think I hold the sticks in a way that a drum teacher would think, oh, that's a good grip. I just hold the sticks. I hold the sticks in a way that feel good to me.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to hold the sticks right at the back. Sometimes I'm holding the stick like this, like with two fingers, right?
Yeah.
That is where I'm holding the stick, because I've seen it on video. I've stopped a video and looked at it, and I'm holding the stick like that with the very last two fingers. You know, it's as far back as that, but it feels good to me at the time to do that.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, back here in a sort of traditional way. I just play the way I feel, and I don't care if people sit too high, too low, have their toms up here. The only thing that matters is what comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And if what comes out is fantastic, then whatever you're doing is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Let's see. There's a particular comment I'm looking for. Joe Franco. Joe, how's it going? Joe Franco was our guest the other day. Do you know Joe in New York?
I know who he is, yeah.
Yeah. He's watched. He says, I saw the King Crimson Radio City show in New York City last September. Killer. That's awesome. Yeah. Let me see. I might have to retrieve this next question I'm looking for from my phone in a moment. So Jeffrey Savale, asked, Gavin, can you talk about your experience performing on the David Letterman show years ago? So I don't know if you missed it, Jeffrey, but Gavin talked about a rare time he dropped a stick was during that show. I was going to ask about that too, so I'll kind of add to that question. What was that phone call like, or email or whatever, when you heard that David was doing drum solo week? Like, did you laugh and hang up, or did you think, yeah, that's what every freaking talk show should be doing? How'd the invite go?
It's fantastic that he did it to give the drummer some attention.
Yeah.
I know Dave Letterman is a drummer of sorts.
Yeah.
And I think Johnny Carson was too.
Yes, he was. I
And
have
the
old
amount of-
video of him, or film rather. Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny was into it, and he had Buddy Rich on so many times.
Yeah.
He loved having drummers.
And his own great drummer, Ed Shaughnessy.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some brilliant clips you can find on YouTube of Ed Shaughnessy, and then times that Buddy Rich comes on the show. So, yeah, Dave Letterman's a drummer, and, Dave Letterman's show is quite hard to find in the UK. It's
Wow.
on some weird sort of cable channel thing.
Oh, wow.
It's not played. I mean, I know what it is, and I've seen it many times, and I've seen it when I'm in the States. So it was kind of surreal. It's like, well, why are you asking me? There's thousands of American drummers who should be on this show. It's kind of bizarre. Actually, it came via my manager. He called me and said, "Oh, you're coming to New York in August." I said, "Am I?" He said, "Yeah, you're going to play a drum solo on the Dave Letterman show." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he does this thing called Drum Week or something, and they did one a little while ago." I said, "Why do they want me?" Said, "They've asked for you."
It was a fantastic performance, though. I post that from time to time on our page, and you were on a great roster. Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, Dennis Chambers. There was one other. I can't remember who it was.
Oh, Tony Royster was on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In fact, I saw Tony. He was on the night before me, and I saw him in the hotel, and I said, "How was that?" And he said, "That was really scary." I mean, it's a lot of pressure. That is a lot of pressure. It's all live. You only get one chance.
Yeah, it's the opposite of the situation we were talking about, where you play live, there's a concert, you don't want anyone to film. That's all they're doing there, basically. There's a few people in the audience, but other than that, you're there just to be filmed and stream live.
Yeah, I think that and the Modern Drummer Festival were probably the two most high-pressure things I ever did.
Oh, wow.
So bear that in mind when you're watching it. The pressure I was under to play, and when I got to the Dave Letterman show, we rehearsed in the afternoon, and then I went and sat in my dressing room, and the show came on the monitor. Tonight, all these guests, and finally it said, "And drum solo from Gavin Harrison." Now that, of course, to me, feels really surreal. What's my name doing on this American TV show?
Yeah.
And I was the last thing on the show.
Oh, so you just sweat that out the whole time in the green room.
Man, I was sitting in a dressing room for an hour. It's the longest hour of my life. I was just pacing around, like just walking up and down around this dressing room, thinking, "Oh my God, it's too late to get out of it now." So it was kind of surreal, the adrenaline and the amount of pressure. But I've got to say, what cracked it for me was just seeing Will Lee, the bass player. I'm a massive Will Lee fan.
Oh, nice.
And right at the beginning, when we started playing, I looked over and he was smiling at me, and I thought, this is the real joy for me. To play with Will Lee, this is a dream come true.
That's great.
Being on the telly and being on the Dave Letterman show and all that. And I looked at Will Lee and I thought, oh man, I'm such a fan.
Oh, that's awesome.
This was great. So I just thought, well, look, just enjoy it. This is your chance to play with Will Lee.
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
It's a beautiful thing. I had a plan. I had, of course, figured out the kind of things I wanted to play, but I hadn't worked out note for note what I was going to play. And I'd figured it. They told me, look, you've got to do 3 minutes, 20 seconds, no longer, no less. And you have to use the band. So I thought, okay, well, everyone knows The Chicken. That's an easy song. And I devised a thing where I could we'll play the head of the song, and then I'll play a drum solo. And on bar 16 of the drum solo, the whole band can come in with ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-da-ba. Then I'll do another 15 bar drum solo with that phrase on the end.
Yeah.
So I'll do 4 of those. We'll play the head of the song. I'll do those 4 short drum solos, and then we'll play the head of the song. And I'd figured it all out on the computer. That came to 3 minutes 20. So
Jeez.
all I really had to remember is what was the kind of thing I'm going to do in the first solo, the second solo, the third solo, and the fourth solo.
Right.
So I hadn't worked out exactly what I was going to do, but I kind of knew, okay, I'm going to do this kind of thing, and then I'm going to do that sort of thing, and then that's the first solo. So all I had to do was try and remember those
Right.
blocks. I wasn't going to leave it to chance in front of millions of people to just improvise off the top of my head.
Right.
In a pub, local pub, with no one filming it, I'd be very happy to.
Yeah, yeah.
But with Will Lee and the orchestra and Dave Letterman sitting there and, you know, millions of Americans watching, I wasn't going to leave it all to total chance, because improvising under huge pressure, that's something that could go wrong.
Yeah, well, it was a great performance. It's fun to watch.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I want to read something. I hope, Julie, you don't mind me reading this publicly. She sent me this privately before the interview. She said, tell Gavin. So Julie is in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but she's from America. So when she decided to move there, she had to really think about what was she going to take. And she said, I had to weigh my 2 bags for my one flight to Amsterdam, and it was hard to decide what to take. And it was actually, your book made it.
Well, I'm honored.
Yeah, so props to Julie. That's awesome. We're running out of time, folks. I know there's so many great comments and questions. Oh, and Julie comments here real quickly. I attended your drum clinic at Herman's Hideaway in Denver. With my drum teacher. I also bought your book, Rhythmic Composition, and learned a lot that night. That's awesome. I'd love to have you on again. There's so much more to talk about with your career, but I'd like to end with this. I know that it's rare that you're not working in any way, shape, or form, even when you're not touring, doing a lot of file sharing, session recording in your studio there and whatnot. But in those rare times when you're not playing drums, you're not doing anything musically related, give us a nugget to get you know you in another layer. What else do you like to do?
Sleep.
Sleep. Sleep is good. Especially at our age.
Yeah, it is. I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I try to go out every day on my bicycle.
Nice.
For like an hour or so. I don't live in the country. I'm in North London, so I'm out there fighting the traffic, which isn't fun. If I lived in the country, I could be out in, you know, the open. That would be a lot of fun. There isn't really a lot I do apart from that. I mean, I like to practice, and it's been nice this lockdown, this whole last 6 months. I can practice as much as I want. Normally, I've only got a few days or weeks before the next tour starts, so I need to do some homework, catch up with the songs of the next tour I'm doing with the next band. And usually we have to record a new album, or I've got to record something. You know, I filmed a drum solo for Modern Drummer for the Neil Peart tribute.
Yeah.
And I've also filmed a 36-minute segment for PASIC for the Percussive Arts Society, and I filmed it right here.
Great.
That's actually been good fun. It took me a long time to do it, because this year there'll be a virtual Percussive Arts Society convention. So, yeah, I keep pretty busy here. I also like doing nothing, which is, you know, you can't be too overrated. It's great. Just
I agree.
And doing whatever you want, watching YouTube, watching Netflix, relaxing,
just
sleeping.
chill.
You know, my life's sometimes very, very hectic, and I tour a lot. So it's actually quite refreshing to be home, practice whenever I want. You know, I can't practice when I'm on tour. It's a total drag. I just can't, you know, I like to do about 4 or 5 short segments. I used to practice like 6 hours a day. I can't do that anymore. The most productive thing for me is to play about 15, 20, 25 minutes, and then an hour or so later, I might do another 20 minutes, and then 2 or 3 hours later I might do 15 short bursts.
Yeah.
Where I can really concentrate and really work on some ideas and improvise a little bit, and do whatever I sort of follow my nose and do whatever I want to do. That works best for me. Trying to nail my butt to the drum stool for 6 hours, I can't do that anymore. My concentration and my tinnitus won't allow it. But I did do that for quite a few years in my 20s.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to have you on again. There's so much more to talk about, and I really appreciate you taking time. And I appreciate you folks watching. Gavin Harrison is my guest, with myself, Dan Shinder, here on Drum Talk TV. Spread this around your other, not just drummer friends, but other music fans and fellow musos. I'm sure they'll enjoy it. And Gavin, hang on the line with me for just a moment. And folks, we will see you again soon. Thanks so much for following what we do here on Drum Talk TV. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.